David Auslander, age 10. Noemi Austerlitz, age 12. Shulam Berger, age 3. Moses Burkhan, age 4. Esther Berkovitz, age 16.
Genta Berkovitz, 13. Miriam Berkovitz, 1. Moshe Berkovitz, 10. Shifra Berkovitz, 14. Shmuel Berkovitz, 17. Naftali Berkovitz, 10. Armin Blau, 14. Sarah Blau, 12. Samuel Blecher, 12. Herschel Blech, 12. Lena Blech, 6. Netta Blech, 4. Raya Blech, 4. Shlima Blech, 17. Yaakov Blechman, 8. Jacqueline Blinbaum, 6. Mojdek Blinbaum, 17. Emmanuel Bloch, 3. Esther Bloch, 12. Binem Braun, 12. Edith Braun, 14. Jakob Braun, 7. Monique Braun, 11. Rebecca Braun, 4. Boriska Brenner, 8. Ersi Brenner, 17. Istvan Brenner, 10. Marty Brenner, 6. Irka Bretterman, 17. Haya Brenner, 15. Larissa Bricker, 3.
Good afternoon. My name is Colin Muscat, and I'm chair of the Jewish Federation of Edmonton's Holocaust Education Committee. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to commemorate Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. Ceremonies such as this are being held all over the world today, as we honor and remember those who perished in the Holocaust and those who survived one of humankind's darkest moments. Today we stand together and say, never again. We wish to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Saulteaux, Niitsitapi, Métis, and the Nakota Sioux. Please rise and join the Talmud Torah grade 5 and 6 classes in the singing of O Canada. I'll be seated. Before we start today, I would like to acknowledge that Yom HaShoah is a somber occasion, and out of respect for those affected by this tragedy, we respectfully request that you refrain from applause after our speakers and readers. Please welcome Stephen Schaefer, immediate past president of the Jewish Federation of Edmonton and chair of the Community Relations Committee.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Jewish Federation of Edmonton, I would like to welcome Deputy Premier Madhu, Your Worship, Mayor Sohi, MLAs, City Councilors, and guests to today's ceremony. I am grateful today to see the grade 5 and grade 6 students from Talmud Torah. Amongst them is my daughter, whose Hebrew name is Chaya. She's named after my grandmother, Helen Schaefer. My grandmother grew up in a large family in a town in Poland called Suchedniu, just north of Kielce. From 1939 to 1945, she was displaced, firstly in a ghetto, and then to a series of camps where she was a forced laborer. She watched as all decency was taken from her, her family torn apart. They were robbed, assaulted, and murdered solely because of who they were, Jews. My story is not unique. It is the fabric of our community. The atrocities at Auschwitz, Birkenau, Treblinka, Chelmno, Buchenwald, and Sobibor, the murders at Babi Yar, and in every city, town, and village throughout Europe will be carried with us as a people forever. 6 million Jews were systematically murdered at the hands of the Nazis and their collaborators. I, unfortunately, am the last generation to have known the Holocaust survivors as a major part of our community. Their history, their memories need to be preserved. We must never forget their stories, as they are our history. Today, we remember the victims. We must honor and remember, as Elie Wiesel said, without memory, there would be no civilization, no society, no future. It is our duty to remember the Holocaust. By remembering the horrors of the Holocaust, we can work together to prevent it from happening again. We must also remember to live as Jews and be proud of being Jewish. To live is our victory over Nazism. And I come back to my grandmother's and my daughter's name, Chaya. Translated into English, it means life. A couple of years ago, a composer in Israel assembled 100 Holocaust survivors and their descendants who numbered in the thousands. Together they sang Ofra Chaza's song, Chai, life. They sang the words, Ani od chai chai chai, Am Yisrael chai. Zeh hashir shesaba shar etmol le'aba vehayom ani. Translated, the song says, I'm still alive, alive, alive. The people of Israel live. This is the song of my grandfather that my grandfather used to sing to my father, and today I'm singing it. We must remember that those who were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators were murdered for being who we are. We must remember what hate can lead to. In Leviticus 19:18, it says, Ve'avta l'recha kamocha ani Adonai, which means, love your neighbor as you love yourself. I am the Lord your God. Rashi went on to say that this is the most fundamental principle of the Torah. The Holocaust started because people stopped loving their neighbors. It started with rhetoric, with words, and action, and the actions against the Jews increased and ultimately led to their planned annihilation. The Jewish Federation of Edmonton remains committed to combating this hate, whether directed against our community or against others. This past fall, the government of Alberta passed an order in council adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism. Further, a month ago, a unanimous motion which was brought by MLAs Yao and Gottfried was passed in the legislature, directing that the IRA definition of anti-Semitism be adopted by all ministries, publicly funded school boards, post-secondary institutions, public agencies, boards and commissions, and other publicly funded legislative or regulated bodies. The adoption of this definition of anti-Semitism in Alberta caps a decades-long advocacy goal of the Jewish Federation of Edmonton. Countless hours have gone into this endeavor, and we look forward to working with the government of Alberta and other levels of government or institutions in putting procedures and policies into place to implement the adoption of the definition to protect our community. By defining what anti-Semitism is, we can properly fight it. It is unfortunate that even today, we continue to see anti-Semitism alive and flourish in the province of Alberta, and we need to work to combat it at every level so that we can say, never again. We need to use those words as a rallying cry for our community and for all Albertans. Let us remember and mourn the victims of the Holocaust, but let's also use the lessons learned to live our Jewish lives fully, freely, and with pride, and to speak up for a more just society, free from discrimination and hate, whether it be against our community or others. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I would now like to welcome Minister Casey Madu to read the Provincial Holocaust Proclamation.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Yom HaShoah Memorial Ceremony this afternoon. And thank you to the Jewish Federation of Edmonton. So today we gather as a community to recognize and remember the millions of Jews senselessly murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust, also known as Shoah in Hebrew. On this Holocaust Remembrance Day, we stand in solidarity with the Jewish community and with all those who have been affected by the horrors of the Holocaust. The lighting of the memorial candle is a symbolic act to keep the memory of those who perished during the Holocaust alive. And as we light these candles, we remember not only the tragic loss of life, but also the resilience and bravery of those who survived, who persevered, and who fought for freedom and justice. And today we take a moment to reflect on the past. Let us also vow to work towards a brighter future, one where hate and discrimination have no place. Let us strive to create a world where diversity is celebrated and where we can all live in peace and harmony. This is important to me, not just because of my strong support for the Jewish community, but also because of who I am. So I do want to thank you for the invitation to join this important commemoration and to let us each take a moment to light a candle in remembrance of those who lost their lives during the Holocaust. And I will now read the Holocaust Memorial Day and Genocide Remembrance Act on behalf of the government of Alberta. Whereas the Nazis and their collaborators also persecuted and murdered millions of other people because of their race, religion, level of physical or mental ability, or sexual orientation. Whereas during World War II, Albertans bravely served as members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and many Albertans paid the ultimate price, their lives to protect and preserve freedom and democracy. Whereas Shoah is the Hebrew term for Holocaust, whereas it is befitting and right to observe Yom HaShoah, the day of the Holocaust, as a day to remember the victims and survivors of the Holocaust and to honor those who fought to defeat tyranny and genocide. And whereas this day provides Albertans with the opportunity to look within themselves, reflect on the enduring lessons of the Holocaust, and educate their children, their colleagues, and their fellow citizens on the perils of hatred, to consider other times and incidents of systemic violence, genocide, and persecution, racism, and hatred that call out to us from the past and continue today, and to reaffirm their commitment to uphold the human right of all and to value diversity and the multicultural richness of our better society. Whereas on Yom HaShoah, we will remember, for we must never forget. Therefore, therefore, His Majesty, by and with advice and the consent of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, enact as follows. Yom HaShoah, the day of the Holocaust, as determined in each year by the Jewish lunar calendar, is proclaimed as Holocaust Memorial Day, Yom HaShoah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Madhu. I would now like to call upon Jillian Horwitz, a longstanding member of the Holocaust Education Committee, to recite a prayer for the victims.
A prayer for the victims. God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, please be not silent and show no restraint. On behalf of the Jewish blood that has been spilled like water, but grant perfect rest on the wings of your divine presence, in the lofty abode of the holy, pure, and valiant, who shine as the brightness of the heavens to the souls of our brothers and sisters. 6 million Jewish men, women, and children who were put to death, slaughtered, burned, murdered, starved, and burned alive, who suffered other forms of unnatural death at the hands of the accursed German Nazis and their collaborators. May their names be wiped out in Auschwitz, Treblinka, Majdanek, Mauthausen, and in other death camps in Europe, and who gave up their lives in order to sanctify God's name, because we are at one with their memory, and we pray for the elevation of their souls. Their resting place should be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore shall the Master of Mercy care for them, under the protection of his wings at all times, and bind their souls in the bond of everlasting life. O earth, do not conceal their blood, and let there not be a resting place for their cry. In their merit shall the remnant of Israel return to its rightful place. And as for the Holy One, their righteousness shall be in front of the Lord as an everlasting memory. They will come in peace and will rest in peace. They will meet their rightful destiny at the end of days. May their memory serve as a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
Thank you, Jillian. We would now like to welcome Francie Singizer and Stephanie Hendon to lead the candle lighting ceremony in memory of the 6 million. Candles will be lit by Holocaust survivors Anna Linetsky, Ann Sector, and Abe Silverman, and second-generation survivors Jack Schwartzberg, Sam Koplowitz, and Leon Kagan.
We light this first candle in memory of our fellow Jews, the 6 million who have perished in many places at the hands of the Nazis in the most cruel and inhumane ways, some by starvation, some by torture, and so many by poisonous gas, but all with Shema Yisrael on their lips. We light this second candle in sacred memory of our brothers and sisters who died in Auschwitz, Dachau, Treblinka, Majdanek, Mauthausen, Bergen-Belsen, and Babi Yar. We light this third candle in memory of the 1.5 million pure and innocent Jewish children who perished during the Holocaust.
We light this fourth candle in memory of our brothers and sisters who, as partisans and underground fighters against the Nazis, defended Jewish honor and dignity. We light this fifth candle in memory of the heroic fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto, who in their darkest hour broke the chains of slavery and freed themselves to fight the Nazi savages, and when they died, did so with dignity. We light this sixth candle in sacred memory of those who opened the gates to freedom, the liberators who set us free. May these 6 candles never let us forget this greatest of human tragedies.
Thank you to our candle lighters and readers for leading us through this meaningful experience. I would now like to welcome Mayor Amarjeet Sohi to bring greetings from the City of Edmonton.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Jewish Federation of Edmonton for bringing the community together to pay our tribute to millions of Jews who were murdered, slaughtered, and the ability for community to come together to remember them, pay our tribute, but also renew our commitment that those memories must live on, that they live on in this generation, but they also live on into the future generations to ensure that such atrocities will never happen again. It is very important that as a community we come together. So I want to thank the volunteers for doing so and bringing us together. I also want to convey to you on behalf of City Council, and a number of my colleagues are here today joining to remember that your City Council is deeply committed to building an Edmonton for all of us, which means that we create conditions that in this city there should be no room for anti-Semitism, for discrimination, for racism. And as a community, we're working together to eradicate. Over the last number of years, we have seen a rise in hate in Canada, particularly the incidents that we have seen of rising anti-Semitism in this country and in this city. Just want to highlight one initiative that will help community identify those hate incidents and report, which is the launch of the Lighthouse app. It's an ability for city to track the hate symbols in our city, then provide a proper response through enforcement, through education, to ensure that those hate symbols are removed, that they're cataloged in a way that when police responds, they know which is a hate symbol, which is not, and make that distinction, then make a decision whether that is a hate crime or not. I think will allow us to identify the acts of anti-Semitism and racism and discrimination in our city. So I want you to know that we take our responsibilities very, very seriously. I also want to pay tribute to all of you in a way that what your community has gone through, unimaginable suffering that you have gone through, that can demoralize a community, that can set a community on a path that trauma and pain is very difficult to overcome. But your community is a very resilient community. Every day, we see people from the Jewish community here in Edmonton who are so strong that not only they're able to pull themselves together, but they're leading the community to be a better community, to be an inclusive community, to be a welcoming community for all of us. So I want to pay that tribute, pay that respect, and acknowledge the contributions that you have and continue to make to build Edmonton for everyone. So when we come together to remember family members, friends that are no longer with us, that should not have died, should not have been killed because of hatred and violence, at the same time living those memories through our actions to ensure it doesn't happen again, that we work together to build a city that is welcome and inclusive and embracing for all of us. So with that, thank you so much for having us join you today, and once again to the volunteers of bringing community together.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. I would now like to welcome Stacey Levitt-Wright, the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Edmonton, to read a passage.
Let us say Kaddish, not only for the dead, but also for the living who have forgotten the dead. And let the prayer be more than prayer, more than lament. Let it be outcry, protest, and defiance. And above all, let it be an act of remembrance. For that is what the victims wanted, to be remembered, at least to be remembered. For just as the killer was determined to erase Jewish memory, so were the dying heroes and fighting martyrs bent on maintaining it alive. They are now being defamed or forgotten, which is like killing them a second time. Let us say Kaddish together and not allow others to betray them posthumously.
Thank you, Stacey. Rabbi Stephen Schwartzman from Beth Shalom Synagogue will now lead us in the Mourner's Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון וביומי חון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא. ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לאלה, מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Thank you, Rabbi. Rabbi Gaital from Beth Israel Synagogue will now recite the El Moleh Rechamim, the Hebrew prayer for the dead.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, האמצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמות הקדושים והטהורים, שהומתו ושנהרגו, ושנשחטו, ושנשרפו, ושנטבעו, ושנחנקו על קידוש השם, על ידי הצורים הגורמנים ועוזריהם משאר האומות, בעבור שאנו מתפללים בעד הזכרת נשמותיהם, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם, לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור החיים את נשמותיהם, אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם, ונאמר אמן.
Thank you, Rabbi Tal. And now for a few words of wisdom, called a Devar Torah, from Rabbi Gila Kane from Temple Beth Ora.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everyone who's here today. And please take my words as an addition to all the beautiful and meaningful thoughts and words that have already been said. Just an added thought. So, Dvar Torah is a word or teaching of Torah. And Torah isn't only our sacred text, but also a metaphor for all of Jewish culture through the ages. It's that which connects us to our ancestors and connects us onward to our descendants. And today's Dvar Torah will focus on two things. It'll focus on a verse from Torah and on the act of Kriyah. And I'll talk about Kriyah soon. But first for the verse. It says in Leviticus, V'seret lanefesh lo titnu bivsarchem. You shall not make gashes in your flesh for the dead. You shall not make gashes in your flesh for the dead. This is a very strong image of gashing our flesh, of cutting into our own flesh. It's a powerful image of the places where sadness can bring us into when we're mourning for someone. I'm thinking of people who, through deep mourning, find themselves in self-starvation or drug abuse or alcoholism or many other ways that people find in order to deal with deep emotional pain. But we're prohibited from going into gashing our own flesh. And I would like us to think specifically on this day about the difference between remembering something difficult and re-traumatizing ourselves. And as I was thinking of this verse more than a decade ago, the question came to my mind, can communities gash their own flesh? Can a community do that to itself? And I was asking myself, are we as Jews doing that to ourselves in the way that we remember the Shoah? Not on purpose, just because the pain is so deep. I'm thinking of one thing that I actually never did, and I probably won't do and will not send my children, is going on these trips to the death camps. Because in my mind, in my personal opinion, I know people have different opinions, that is a form of gashing our own flesh. It is a form of re-traumatizing rather than remembering. People are, entitled to their own opinions on this, but I think it's a question our community has to ask itself. Are we centering our identity on the Shoah? Now, Jewish culture has known many catastrophes in the past 2,500 years, a variety of catastrophes. And as a minority group, I'm sad to say, we will probably see other things happen, okay? And we see the rise in anti-Semitism today. So things are happening, but our strength as a community lies in our cultural and religious practice of focusing on life. And by knowing how to create very, very, very clear separations between life and death, between the world of the living and the world of the dead. We remember our dead, we respect their memory, we love their memory, but we don't get mixed up in death. As a community, as a culture. I'm not going to go into all the ways in which we do these separations. If you want, I can talk to you later on. But in remembering all the many victims of the Shoah, our family members, we have to be very clear with ourselves going forward that we are remembering them as mourners and not unintentionally making the memory turn us into victims of the Holocaust. Okay, so we need to remember that we are mourners and not victims of the Holocaust. So how do you become a mourner and not a victim? There's many traditions of mourning. I will share one personal tradition that I started practicing in the last few years, and that is by kri'ah. Kri'ah is an indication. When somebody close to us has died in our tradition, we tear our shirt, okay? Either at the funeral or at the moment of hearing about death, by starting to practice kri'ah with myself, with friends, on the evening of Holocaust Remembrance Day. I situate myself in my mind as an embodied practice in the place of mourner and not a victim. Because for myself, I need that distinction to be very clear. As a community, there are other ways of doing that. And we won't go into that just now. It's going to take longer than the time we have at this moment. For all of the non-Jewish people who are here today with us, first of all, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you for being with us here at our time of mourning, at visiting with us and supporting us. I would also like to ask you, as a way of support for our community, to make sure that your communities actually meet live Jews. Okay? I would like to ask that if you have to choose, ask your children to go and play or hike or do social justice work with live Jewish children rather than learning about dead Jewish children. For the Holocaust survivors in this room, I want to say that our first and foremost obligation and wish is to be with you, is to show our love and respect and support for you at this time in the way that our community can do it. And for the second, third, or all the Jews in the room, kol haYehudim kan, our Torah is called the Tree of Life. Our focus is on life. And over the past 2,500 years, we've learned how to contain death and memory of pain within prescribed times and rituals. okay? We have to learn how to cling on to the tree of life, make that the focus of our Jewish identity. And I hope we learn to leave the land of the dead and plant ourselves strongly in our tree of life, in the land of the living, in our Torah. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi King. I would like to welcome the Talmud Torah Grade 6 class to share a special song under the direction of Ben Ragozin.
Vladislav Schlingel, born 1914, killed on May 8, 1943 during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. He was a Polish poet who wrote many poems and prose about the reality of his life in Poland during the Holocaust.
In one of his writings, The Little Station Treblinka, Schlingel describes the ironies he saw in the physical surroundings of those who were making their last trip of their lives on the train to the Treblinka camp. Warsaw line from the Warsaw East Station. You leave by rail and ride straight on. The journey lasts sometimes 5 hours and 45 minutes. But sometimes it lasts a lifetime, until death.
The station is tiny. 3 fir trees grow there. The sky is ordinary.
No cashier's window, no porter in view. No return tickets, not even for millions. There, no one is waiting, no one waves a curtain. And only silence hovers, death, emptiness greets you. Silent the flagpole, silent the fir tree, silent the black sign. Only an old poster with fading letters advises. Cook with gas.
I thank you all for coming out to commemorate Yom HaShoah and to pay respect to our local Holocaust survivors and their families. A special thank you to our speakers, readers, local dignitaries, our volunteers, and professional staff. Also, thank you to the Alberta Legislature for providing this venue. Can you please rise and join the grade 6 class, as well as the grade 5 class, in the singing of Hatikva, the national anthem of the State of Israel. Thank you for attending the Yom HaShoah commemoration.